Forspoken is a game that came and went for many people. With the way the game marketed itself, it came across to many as something not worth investing in. But for me personally, I was here for the parkour magic concept. A good amount of you should know I value great movement in games, as some of my previous videos and shorts covered Dying Light and Mirror's Edge. Movement is what most people say in the way of praise when it comes to Forspoken, but that is it. It's criticized for its world design, story, and character work, but you saw the title. I'm taking Forspoken to court. Alfrey, or Frey Holland, is an interesting character archetype. You learn that she is a criminal, an orphan, a person with supposedly...
You have so much
potential? I can do so much more with my life. I'm a smart girl with a bright future.
I was going to say you have so much anger and resentment in you, I'm not sure you'll ever amount to anything at all. Truth hurts.
I appreciate that little flip on the dialogue. It'll definitely come into play later on in the game, which I appreciate. In the holiday spirit, we avoid jail time and we are sentenced to 120 hours of community service. This gives us a chance to get acquainted with Alfrey and her world. It's Christmas in New York, the time to be with family and friends, but all that Frey has in terms of company is the gangs, her shoes, and her cat, Homer. She wants it out more than anything, and she finally is getting that with the money she has saved up, till it's violently taken away in a fire started by the gang that was after her. Saving Homer, but losing the money she had saved up in the process. It's little actions like these throughout this early section that showcase that Frey is capable of doing good. Yet, this is her life now. Giving Homer to the only person that she can trust, she goes back to the bridge where she was founded as a baby, the same day even, on Christmas, to weigh whatever option she has left.
Full circle. Happy birthday to me. Thanks, Mom. No, I'm better than that. No, I'm gonna fix things. Get Homer back. Finally get out of...
And with seemingly none, she is presented with a new one, with a guiding light that leads her to a new world, to a new friend.
Where on earth is this?
Athia?
Who's there?
And technically not Earth. Well, not what you would call Earth, anyway.
I swear to God, asshole, show yourself!
Show myself? I've shown. I'm showing. I can't get more showed. Show myself, indeed.
Where are you?
Right here, at the end of your arm. The thing that you so fruitlessly tried to remove. Oh, hello, yes. Oh, perhaps you're smarter than you look.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
You, the one talking to me right now, or this... Cuff?
The introduction of Cuff opens up the topic of dialogue in this game, mainly Cuff and Frey, as that is what you'll be hearing the most. Frey's dialogue on its own can sound very marvelly, and the promotional material didn't really help this game's case, but honestly this back and forth between the two really helps make it not feel insufferable, and can actually be kind of refreshing to hear and help give us as a player a window into the mindset of Frey in between all the chaos this new world brings.
How is this happening?
Well, what were you doing before this was happening,
I was... Doesn't matter.
There'll be other major points in the game where you'll have optional dialogue with Cuff to get a better understanding of the world around you. But for now, we need to find shelter and get introduced to the game's combat of throwing magic rocks. And it slowly but surely builds up. From basic attacks to different support magic types, but we'll touch on all of that when it becomes more relevant. As it's really hard to now, given this game's structuring, it has some charm with the dialogue and such, but if I'm playing it for the first time, I'm not going to be motivated to progress much further in between these awkward combat sections. I say awkward not because the combat system is bad, but because the enemy AI can come across brain dead. Sometimes they'll run away from you or just stare at you lovingly for 30 seconds, and even when they do attack, they only have like 1 or 2 attack types. This also goes for a good amount of the enemy types, even some of the mini bosses, except for the ones in the main story. And while yes, I understand it's a bit difficult to make a game that will help balance out between Frey's advanced moveset, it doesn't really leave a positive impact on the player who's playing for the first time, probably not on the hardest difficulty, which they didn't even add until a later patch. That just has AI that acts like this. It doesn't tell me that your combat is engaging, it doesn't push me to think differently or utilize all the other stuff. So yeah, honestly, these first 7 to 8 hours, give or take, can be kind of rough for some people. And the reason why that I was even so invested the way I was because I knew as I played the demo that I can get to a point where I found the combat to be a lot more engaging, a lot more diverse, a lot more interesting. And that is what kept me pushing when I first started playing this game. But a lot of people didn't play the demo, so unfortunately you will have people online that will be complaining, and to an extent understandably so, about the game's mechanics and the things that were thought out about it. As I mentioned, there is a very hard difficulty, and as you engage with it, you are feeling the burn, so to speak, as it makes you utilize all the game's mechanics, more specifically, flow. To not confuse anyone at home, flow is essentially what Frey will be using to get around the map, but in the case of combat, especially on a high level, you want to integrate it as much as you can, as there are some nuances to how it can be used. Frey comes with 3 basic attack types with multiple charge levels that increase the effect of the respective attacks. On its own, if you just hold the button for a certain amount of time, it will reach the max level, but there are faster ways of doing so. After utilizing support magic, you can combo into a fully charged attack instantly. Or if you utilize flow properly, you can also avoid the charge time as well. The engagement of Forspoken's combat mainly comes from the player themselves, incentivizing themselves to better grasp mechanics, and unfortunately, throughout the game's first 3 difficulties, it doesn't do enough to push the player to think about the game's mechanics that deeply. As unfortunately as I mentioned with the enemy AI, at times it can feel like a Tom and Jerry episode. In fact, it's not that bad when fighting multiple enemies. In fact, at its best on a high level, fighting multiple enemies can actually be the most fun I have with Forspoken's combat. A lot of people I see overlook the complexities of Forspoken's combat, and understandably so. I find that the game's lower difficulties doesn't punish you enough for not thinking about proper ways to utilize the spells, especially when a good amount of boss fights have 1 to 2 attack types they just throw at you. The game doesn't have a mana system or anything like that you have to manage, so you're pretty much free to spam. The main ways the game incentivizes you to utilize different spells is when you realize an enemy type is resistant to a specific magic type, so you as a player have to switch your spell sets. Which is unfortunate as there is a lot of diversity in the spell tree that I feel a lot of players won't acknowledge. As the ways you get different spell trees is throughout the game, Frey will be able to go through multiple realms and try and subdue but eventually kill multiple Tantas. Tantas are essentially these women who are worshipped as they protected the common folk, but they and all the realms have been affected by the break, an unknown miasma that corrupts anything that it touches except for you. The game has a fairly linear structure. You explore an area for a bit, then go back to Sepal, which is where the remainder of humanity is, and a specific event within that city will push Frey to go further on in the story. In the early hours, it is the death of a child Frey befriends, Olivia, a girl who she saw herself in, who was killed by the Tanta, Scylla, as she was looking for Frey because apparently she isn't welcomed here. Olivia's death pushes Frey not on a path of heroism, but on revenge. Scylla is a Tanta of strength, and the break corrupted her mind to follow her base impulses of war and battle. She and the other Tantas are really strong boss fights, having multiple distinct phases with unique attack types that pressure you in a lot of ways. It's actually quite stressful to fight them at times, and I enjoy the push and pull nature of their fights. And as I mentioned, each one you go after, you'll be awarded with a new spell set which will provide different buffs and support spells. This is where the combat becomes more interesting. Scylla and the other Tanta spell set is reflective of their character and is personified with Frey's own personality. In the case of Scylla, with the usage of fists and spears, it has a great balance between melee and mid-range combat. Each of the Tantas have unique spells to choose from, each providing unique crowd control capabilities, allowing for you to use them as ways to set up or extend combo potential. It's actually when fighting multiple enemies at once where Forspoken's combat shines, as enemies become harder not just because they take more damage, but because they utilize more unique attack types. Some dishes out poison, and another can do attacks that lowers Frey's defense, making her take more damage from attacks. Ways to counter these debuffs are throughout the different spell sets, which there are 4 in total by the end of the game. Using the support magic that counters these debuffs will help increase survivability immensely, especially on the hardest difficulty. There's mastery involved, as there's different ways to switch between the spell sets. You can open up the spell menu on the fly, and on lower difficulties the game will slow down, but on very hard the game will not, so you have to choose wisely when and how you switch to a different spell set. You can do it in air or in between animations, but the most impactful way of doing it is when you press a button input and Frey will do an attack that will switch her to that respective spell set. Doing this drains Frey's stamina bar slightly, so you have to use it wisely, and you are rewarded for doing so. Given the fact the game doesn't stop whenever you switch spell sets, it rewards the player for quick thinking. There is a button that you can press that allows you to cycle through spells on the fly without opening a menu, but you may need a specific support magic immediately, so memorizing where one is incredibly powerful, and you feel a sense of mastery being able to select the right one that you wanted on the fly. While the support magic does provide buffs, they also provide wholly new abilities that could help enhance your combat experience. So while yes, you may be prompted to use Prowess magic on ranged enemies, you can also switch to Frey's magic and you'll be able to utilize things like turrets and vine traps for you to choose from, which will allow for you to deal with multiple enemies more quickly. Learning different ways to combine the different spell sets is crucial to ending fights quickly. And there's enough enemy variety from the mid to end game that pushes different thinking at times and avoiding that Tom and Jerry effect that these fights can have. You are rewarded for exploring these systems. Not only does it look amazing to chain these different spells in multiple ways, it's also very practical to get the most out of fights, and you are punished for a boring experience if you don't explore these things. Excuse me for this transition, but the exploration of Forspoken, like exploring the open world, is integral to getting the most out of the game. This game is an RPG and it has a lot going for it within the open world. There is a multitude of locations like towns, caves, and towers that you have to explore, and you may have to find a specific item or kill enemies, and you are awarded XP or other things to help you level up. Some of which may have unique items like cloaks, which you know me, I'm all for that, and nails, both of which can provide unique magical benefits. You may even find lore in these specific locations that will help contextualize what the purpose of it was. Like one location in Avalet, Tanta Prav's realm, will have a notable courthouse location, while Tanta Sila will have a notable location of barracks, contextualizing her warrior persona. You'll find villages and homes of people you meet throughout the game. What's also pretty cool is that Frey will respond to what she sees in these locations in a specific way, which is incredibly helpful for the player to help feel grounded in the world.
What the fuck happened to this place? Looks like they had a huge earthquake and then gravity lost its shit.
This is what happens when a Tanta's power goes haywire. Be prepared for even more twisted terrain ahead.
As if I needed any more reasons to steer clear of this one.
A lot of people, I think, unjustifiably so, compare this game and criticize this game actually for being like another Ubisoft open world game, which I don't think they understand the problems of a Ubisoft open world game to really be saying that. See, Ubisoft open world games, at least the criticisms I have of it, is that they just place copy-paste stuff with no meaning, no thought really putting into it. But honestly, a lot of the stuff within Forspoken's open world is decently thought out, well contextualized, and fits within the contexts of each realm, as I've already proven within this last section. I think, there's only so many ways that, a game can really be different from another open world game and not feel derivative. But in this case, I think Forspoken does a pretty decent job of not really shaking it up, but actually making it feel like what you're exploring is meaningful, which is honestly the most important thing when it comes to making an open world game. And I feel this is also amplified with the fact that each realm has a track that informs the environment. Sila's realm, Praenos, will have this bold sound, while Sepal will have this mythical sound. I can't really describe instruments, as you can tell. Sorry. One more thing I'll comment on is that while I do appreciate the attempt of making each of the realms feel different with the usage of different color palettes, and it does actually work for the most part, I just don't like how it looks in Fosoria. The green, it's just way too much. And it doesn't help that there's these dungeon locations that also keep the same color palette, and it doesn't make it feel like you're doing something particularly unique. This feels like, from the wise words of DJ Khaled himself, like you're doing another one, another task, another thing, with nothing really too unique about it beyond just the bosses that I've already covered. Just do, not all of them, but a good amount of them just doesn't do enough that is memorable or distinct that makes me feel excited fighting them, really. But I did save the best for last to end it on a high note, and that will be cat shrines. No, I do not have to explain myself why I would say these are the best. Like, I mean, you can find these and you can have the cats in pilgrim refuges and they can sleep with you. And they can be alongside you as you grow throughout the world. This is where the game unironically peaks. I have spoken. I mentioned XP gains and such, so I guess I can talk about the skill tree. I honestly don't mind it. It is somewhat annoying as you have to unlock the different charge levels of attack spells, but other than that, each upgrade is actually really significant and not just like a minor XP boost, which I can confidently say is a solid setup from what Control did with the skill tree. You gain more skill points in the form of mana pickups, which are found throughout the open world. You get some as you level up or through specific locations like trials, which is exactly that, trials. I don't need to say more than that. But there are specific spells in the open world that you have to go out of your way to find on your own. They are marked on the map in the far corners of the realms, and that is honestly a great way to incentivize players to explore the world instead of feeling the need to constantly level up. While yes, the open world is vast, it's pretty straightforward on where you need to go to progress, but there's enough in between those main story moments that pushes the player to explore more, which I appreciate. Having said that, what matters the most when it comes to exploration is getting around. Marvel's Spider-Man proved that you can have very uninnovative activities as long as it's fun to get around. Not a dig, I'm just saying. And what appealed to me about Forspoken was the magic parkour. Mechanically, it's pretty simple. Press and hold the flow button and Trey will begin running with a powerful burst of speed. She can run through or over practically any obstacle. What's great about this is that you can use things like trees to help you gain forward momentum while falling to avoid taking fall damage, rewarding thoughtful use of flow instead of mindlessly going through the world. You'll face mountainsides and Frey can climb a good amount of it with well-timed button presses and has satisfying animations as she does them. And the animations are not too overly flashy and you get really good momentum out of them too, which I feel a lot of games this is definitely a dig. Assassin's Creed could definitely take note from. Sorry, I had something in my throat. Each of the realms adds something new in terms of parkour, mainly the first two. Visoria is kind of mainly plains, but it has a decent amount of hillsides that makes up for it. I'll say Praenos rewards timing and playing ahead with its rigid environment, and the same could be said in Avalet, especially in the depths of it, as we see more psychedelics on display. You see that there's towns destroyed due to Pra's unchecked power, and a greater abundance of floating rocks that are placed well enough to push the player to meaningfully utilize the parkour mechanics, but differently from Praenos. There are very small gaps in between these rocks that can be found to help extend your runs, and chaining all the moves together at the right time is euphoric. The narrative of Forspoken comes across to me like the people who worked on the narrative doesn't have much to work on and just more so a barren skeleton, and this is what we got. I know they had writers from Uncharted and Rogue One for the writer's room, and then those ideas were scrapped for the storyline that we have now. According to an initial concept writer, Garry Schyman, there was apparently ideas that he had given to Square Enix in the writer's room, but they scrapped it in favor to the narrative that we have now, and it's kind of apparent here, and it's more so apparent with Frey's character arc. Frey's character arc is weird, I can't even word it correctly. Some of it can easily be misinterpreted, and you know, she's an orphan. Family abandoned her as a baby, and so she holds a lot of that anger and resentment we established early on. But that isn't her only character trait. She's shown multiple times to be capable of caring and doing good. I like how awkward she is when it comes to making connections. I think a character who doesn't have people to call a friend would react like this.
Thing you said, is it worth crap?
No, not my cell phone, and thanks for not swiping that again.
I don't steal from friends.
Friends. Cool. Well, as your friend, I got you this.
Wow! What is that? Are you a taunter?
It's a pen light, and no, I'm not a taunter.
She also clearly has extreme anxiety and reacts impulsively. She isn't entirely likable, and she doesn't do the right thing. When Olivia dies, she goes after Sila for revenge, not to help the people. There's direct consequences of that we see later on, which I respect. But Frey doesn't believe herself to be a hero. When she sees these consequences firsthand, she wants to run away and get out of Athia. I think a lot of people miss the point of this scene as her being cowardly, and that is true to an extent. She also believes this turmoil is all her fault, and the best thing for her to do is run away. And the game very clearly hammers this home that she feels this way by having people around her say in a dream sequence that this is all her fault. And that alone drives her to try to get home as quickly as possible. It's when she defeats the Tanta of Justice, Prav, that she learns that her mother is the Tanta of Love, Cinta. I feel like this twist isn't that effective. Frey should have learned that her mother was a Tanta like at the beginning of the game. This would have led to a bigger physical and mental conflict, as there's clearly distrust between the people and the Tantas, so Frey having to prove herself to not be like them could have been a strong motivator for her to do the side quest that helps the people and showcase that she is capable of compassion. Also, there may be expectations she puts on herself to be a hero of sorts, but she may not feel worthy of that. If anything, that is how she feels when she finds out that her mom is a Tanta. But at this point in time, the game is now 70% done, so there isn't enough time to really explore it, and it kind of falls flat with its ideas here. Frey gets into an argument with one of the supporting characters, Auden. I won't go into detail as what the argument was about, but essentially she says things like she doesn't care if Athia burns or dies, if she can find a way to escape from it. And it was very off-putting for her to say this, and her reasoning behind it was even more so frustrating. Like I mentioned, Frey is showcased to be a really good person. She's capable of doing good, but she just struggles with caring because she feels like as though every time she does care, it doesn't go well. But her just saying that she doesn't care if Athia burns or any way, shape, or form is really fucked up. And especially when her reasoning is that she feels alone, she feels as though she isn't welcomed here. And it's just really confusing to me when the people here have more or less been welcoming to her, except for the Tantas and maybe a couple others here and there during specific points in the story. So it was just really mind-boggling for me when I heard her say this. And it wasn't until I reflected on this more that I actually realized that this could actually make sense, and I'm surprised the game didn't really touch upon the reasoning why she said this. Give me a minute, it's gonna take some explaining here. Towards the final hours of the game, we learn that Cuff is actually Sorceress, a being made to destroy Athia and the Tantas. And all things considering, this is contextualized pretty well. You learn about the Reddick, this invading force who was trying to take over Athia and destroy the Tantas, and Sorceress was made to do exactly that. Which is a lot to throw at you, but then the game throws that the dragon is your mom, which, sure, man, let's just throw it all at the audience, I guess. This is legit the joke Deadpool makes at the end of the newest movie. And we're not even done with all that, because Frey goes into the world between worlds and finds the spirits of the past Tantas, and it's here where they give you a whole playable exposition dump. And granted, there is gameplay sections in between where Frey is given back her powers, but it lasts, at average, to get through the entire thing, 30 minutes. If you actually decide to sit down and listen to everything that is being told to you. You'll learn that in order to defeat Sorceress, the Tantas had to split them up in multiple pieces and they were all latched onto them. Each of the Tantas became corrupted slowly over time, which led them to the state of mind where we find them. This exposition covers a lot of things, but most notably to me was the decision of Tanta Cinta having Frey. Especially given the fact that her father is from Earth, and that led to a lot of complications that you learn with the Tantas.
And one day, you shall know your father. A hero in every sense of the word. I'm sorry, Al. You deserve to know about your daughter. Our darling, precious Alfred. I can hardly wait for you to meet her.
Al. My dad's name was Al. Wait, she didn't name me after him.
I hate to refer to another game, but let's take Control, for example. Throughout the game, Jessie is given signals or calls from people via the hotline. She sees small glimpses of the messages, but it's when you access the menu and answer the call, so to speak, you get the full picture, the full message. Something like that throughout the game could have helped with the flow of all this information or just being shoved at us at this point of the game. As this exposition dump has you go through all these previous locations, it would make more sense to have Frey slowly unpack and learn most of this info over the course of the game. It would give her more personal investment in what's happening around her. Along with my point earlier that I feel as though that Frey should have known that her mother was Cinta at the beginning of the game, it would have added more personal investment for her to learn more about her as much as she could. I see a point of critique people have of the game is that Frey doesn't care, and if the main character doesn't care, why should the player? And that's a great point. However, I believe she does care. I just don't think the game really pushes far enough in the right areas to showcase Frey's internal conflict. But if she knew that the Tanta of Love, her mother, abandoned her, I feel that would have been a great way to explore that. This powerful woman that inspired a realm abandoned her. How could she be a hero? You know, the questions of the why and what happened to Cinta could help drive that anger, anxiety, and curiosity Frey has, and also help push her interest about Athia and her mother going forward. And this curiosity could lead to some conflict that can put a wedge between Frey and the people that care about her. Throughout the game, she sees the consequences of her actions and feels she isn't good enough. That pressure would be added on tenfold if she knew in the beginning her mother was a Tanta. And seeing her struggle with what to do with that responsibility while also weighing the fact she abandoned her would be a great twist on the hero coming of age story, and added more personal investment from the player to the story. I mentioned multiple times that Frey has internal demons, so to speak, and we learned that Sorceress was corrupting the Tantas, and it didn't occur to me till now as I'm reading through this and looking for my footage and everything that when Frey says she doesn't care about when Athia burns or not, that could actually be the corruption manifesting in her. It's honestly very obvious, and it's just kind of shocking that the game doesn't give you much time to really think about it or clarify it in any way, especially given how in your face the exposition in this game is. I really wish that they took some time for Frey to reconcile with that. While yes, you know, these thoughts could be the corruption just affecting her, these were her thoughts, and I think if this scene with the Tantas, it really could have helped explore that and help her reconcile with that and the fact that she killed these people in a more impactful way. But beyond that, this game's ending goes hard. It isn't until this final scene of the exposition that really hit for me. We see Frey's old room and her mother, who is voiced beautifully by Kendall Ray, as she narrates the decision that led her to abandon Frey.
Why did you abandon me?
I was already carrying you when we contained the demon. As its curse took hold, I feared I would lose my mind entirely. I could not risk your coming to harm by my hand. And so, I sent you away. How I would have loved to hold you, to sing to you, to stay with you forever. But you had to be protected. From the demon, from me. I had no choice. And I sent you away just in time. I soon became something else. Something unspeakable. There is no more to tell.
And now, after being told everything of the Tanta's past, Frey can now focus on her future, with a choice that she's presented that we, the player, must make. Go home or go save your new one. And, you know, there's still video left, so yeah.
Sorry, Homer. All right. Let's do this.
And this final fight is actually a really good balance between emotional moments and grand set pieces. Shooting fire from the dragon, seeing Frey ride on his back, it's just sick. The moment when Cinta sacrifices herself to save Frey is heartfelt, and also with a new ability, Taranta, which will allow her to shift between the realm, not taking any damage, which is incredibly needed when avoiding Sorceress attacks. The next phase moves into more mano-a-mano fight. Sorceress becomes aggressive, resorting to melee and heavy rushdown, giving the player opportunities to make counters and meaningful approaches with movement. He, like all the other bosses, are very receptive to all Frey's spells, which helps increase the benefit of investing in them for this moment. The fate of Athia resides in this battle, and Frey now fully realizes her purpose to save the people must stop the thing that the very goal is to burn Athia. And then as the fight progresses, the main theme builds up beautifully, the dialogue between Frey and Cuff really embodying that this is the end.
I underestimated you.
Yeah, I get that a lot. Not many people see my... No, my anger and resentment.
And then the fight itself becomes more methodical. Tighter dodge windows means you have to respect Sorcerer's moves and be patient for an opening. Being too early can leave you open to becoming nearly dead in one hit. I actually died a few times here, and I was really challenged here, and I appreciate that. Frey has her I'm the Jedi moment and stops Sorceress with the power of all the Tantas, which works pretty well considering what we had to do to get here. And with that, Zapala is saved. Frey now fully realizing her purpose, to protect the people, to be in Athia. And Frey is now able to let go of her losses and learn that she can matter. From sitting on top of a bridge, contemplating if she should live or die, to now being able to jump off freely using her powers for the good of Athia. Such a strong parallel on display. The message is strong, albeit could have been amplified more throughout the game. I've already talked about that. It makes sense for her to come to terms with who she is as a person, what she has done to get here, and now all that's left is Forspoken's Endgame.
Damn, that is a lot of land for just one girl to cover. But it's a good thing I'm not doing it on my own. Isn't that right, Cuff?
It's fair, Berice.
Forspoken's Endgame is honestly a reminder of the game itself. Full of promise and interesting ideas for more to come, but it's muddied. Frey's goal now is to try and find a way to stop the break and help the people as much as she can. I find myself challenged a good amount and rewarded immensely for investing in improving my spells when I explore. There's a decent amount here to push you to the far depths of each realm. I say decent as the game's problems still persist within the game's high-end content. You'll be fighting a boss fight for 10 minutes, and the most interesting thing about it is that it'll do the same 1 to 3 attacks, but a lot more faster. It is challenging, but it gets old fast, and I already explained how unengaging that sort of thing is. The way that content really evolves is with nightmares. You go to a location, and a whole new Cthulhu monster will spawn in, and it'll switch forms, making it so you can only use one spell set to do any damage. And it's a pretty engaging fight, as you try to avoid endless attacks from waves of enemies. And all you get is some neat rock for upgrades, and that's it. No change to the skybox, no sense of progress to stopping the break, just more stuff that on its own is very interesting, but nothing that enhances the story forward in a meaningful way. And from a narrative concept, this endgame isn't that strong. You get told of a room your mom had in her castle, and it's a really heartfelt reminder for Frey to realize that her mom has always been with her, that she always will be. It's a standout moment, and then the game points you to replay the main boss fights, and that is it. Forspoken. No more mysteries or interesting ideas. What you see is what you get. And I know games tend to have stagnant endgames, but the game is doing something to set up Frey for bigger trials. And it's just, this is all we have left. Forspoken will never be continued. It just makes me upset that studios will more than likely take the wrong lessons from Forspoken and continue to make games with overly nice characters, on-the-rails mechanics. And it makes me especially sad that we probably won't get as much notable talent like Ella Balicka in the game industry for a while. A woman of color who's oozing with passion for this sort of thing. And now, understandably so, she doesn't seem to want anything to do with it. This is all Forspoken is, but it is something I will cherish. Thank you for watching.